Welcome everyone to the Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Finals in South Africa. We have Hans Niemann on the board here coming in. He's playing with the black pieces against the one and only Magnus Carlsen. The games have begun. Magnus is not there, and so Hans starts the clock and he waits for his opponent to arrive. Magnus and Hans have played against each other quite a few times after their sort of incident that happened in September 2022, and they have been interesting game. And Hans gets up out of respect for Magnus to shake hands, and Magnus sits down at the board. His clock is running, it's 10 minutes plus 5 seconds increment, but he's taking his time to open that can, maybe then to adjust. Oh, he couldn't open it, so now adjusts his pieces. And before he makes his first move, let's try to understand the position in 1 minute here. Okay, freestyle chess. First thing that I do is I try to see which of the pieces are on the same square as standard chess. If you look at this entire position, none of the pieces are on the standard position. So that's very interesting. It will lead to different positions. Are there any pawns in the opponent's camps that are undefended? Actually not. So the move that should be tried to be made is that something that opens up like a bishop here, or c4 that opens up the queen. The knights can generally go behind the pawns or above the pawns here. So these are the few moves: g4, c4, b4. You could also potentially play d4 to open up the bishop here. So you need to kind of try and understand what's happening here. And now that you have some grasp of what's going on, let's go to the game and see what is the first move that Magnus Carlsen played here. He opened the game with pawn to c4. And Niemann instantly responds with c5. You see, Magnus has opened up the queen here. So has Hans Niemann. Magnus pours himself a glass of water there. And now it will be interesting to see what is the next move that Magnus chooses here. He goes pawn to b4. And he wants Hans to maybe play either b6 or d6. d6 makes a lot of sense because it gives a checking option here. Magnus pushes the pawn and blocks the bishop from coming up ahead. Very interesting. The knight could come here and attack the pawn on c4. And Hans plays pawn to g6, a very useful move, opening up the bishop on this diagonal. Magnus can also do the same. He can also open up his bishop. d3. He wants to actually trade this strong black bishop, is my understanding here. And one of the things that you will realize in freestyle chess is that while the opening could seem a bit complicated, at the end of the day, it is all about piece activity. Can you get all your pieces playing together? And that is very important, including the queen, very important there. g3 played to open up the bishop on the long diagonal here. And he plays knight to c7. He's trying to bring in the knight. It's an advantage to white that there's a pawn on b5 that stops any black bishop coming to c6. And there you see, he's now challenged the bishop on h8. A very, very good move by Magnus Carlsen there. And Hans is thinking, where do each of his pieces belong? He first takes on c3, rook takes c3, and now brings his knight to d7. Maybe he wants to put the knight to f6, then bring his bishop out, and you can short castle. That's a very important point there. The king can go to g8, a4. Magnus starting his play on the queen side. He could have ideas of playing a5 as well. And Hans brings his knight to f6. And how does Magnus continue here? Does the knight belong to e3 to go to d5? Does it go to d2? Why? And then to f3? Not sure. He goes knight e3. And he's preparing short castling. Slowly and steadily we are moving to a standard position of the chess. Bishop d7 played. And the reason why we'll reach the standard position, there you see he castles, is because castling is done. And now you see this gives the contours of an English opening here. Hans also castles, and white has a very nice risk-free edge. Magnus can go knight to b3 with the idea of a5 in the position. He goes, yes, knight b3 here. And this could become really dangerous. a5 takes, knight a5, looking at the c6 square there. And pawn to a5, stopping Magnus's pawn from advancing. And if you take here, that wouldn't be that great because knight a6 and the knight gets the b4 square. a4 is a bit weak. So Magnus breaks in the center with d4. Hans is ready with his reply. He goes knight e6. I was wondering if cd4 made sense because now knight e6 means that you get this square on c5. But he played directly and Magnus gains even more space. Hans jumps in with his knight to the center. Knight to d4. And he's hoping that Magnus takes it because pawn takes and that is a piece up. So queen b2 by Magnus, calmly putting his queen on this very strong diagonal. And pawn to e5, bolstering the knight in the center of the board. And this knight here, I mean, you don't want to take it, but en passant seems very important here. Yes, that's what he does. Because now the knight is not as strongly centered, but also, well, the rook opens up for black. These pawns could become potential weakness. So a very complex position is developing. Rook e1. This is a pure Magnus move. Yeah, rook e1. I think he wants to play knight c2 and he doesn't want this to fall on e2. Hans Niemann goes king g7. A risky move, I must say. Coming up on this diagonal here. Both players have roughly 7 minutes on the clock. Magnus Carlsen now zones in. He's trying to think how to continue. He plays rook d3. I love this. Step by step move. e5. He comes knight d2. So firstly, gets the knight away. It's looking to go to e4. Get rid of this knight to get more control over the d5 square. Then jump with d5 here. Bishop comes to e6. Putting pressure on the c4 pawn. Hans is definitely going to put a lot of pressure on Magnus. Knight jumps into d5. Excellent move here by Magnus Carlsen. And Hans must take bishop d5, cd and play this position. This is quite a good one for him as well. e4 coming up maybe. But take with the bishop is very important. He takes with the knight. He goes wrong. Pawn takes. And now suddenly the bishop here. What do you do about it? Bishop g4 played. Now putting pressure on the e2 point. And Magnus pushes his pawn to f3. And you will suddenly see e3 is coming. The knight will be kicked away. Knight jumping to c4, attacking b6 and d6. Bishop h3. But this bishop risks getting trapped with g4. First e3 played, kicking the knight away. Oh my god, this is crazy. The way Magnus has played this game, it just shows how focused he remains when he faces Hans Niemann. Knight f5, putting pressure on both these pawns. Now g4 with the idea of knight e4 and knight f2. Maybe you can start with knight e4. 3 minutes for Magnus, 1 minute for Hans Niemann, 1 minute 50 seconds. And Magnus takes his time because he sees that this is the critical moment, the key moment of the game. He goes knight e4, plays it. And now not just his knight f2 a threat, but also knight g5 becomes a massive threat. He goes knight to h6 and now this move g4. Very important, otherwise the bishop will run away. You want to trap that bishop in and Magnus plays it g4, threatening knight f2. Very now difficult position for black. He must sack his piece. He takes on g4. Knight takes g4 is taken. Pawn takes. Bishop takes. Does Hans have any compensation here? Looks very difficult because of the queen. Look at this queen on b8. It just didn't take part in the game. It didn't move at all. And that's why at the start we mentioned in freestyle chess, you need each and every piece to participate. Rook to f5 played here by Hans. He's trying to get in his pieces into the game. It's not going to be easy. Knight to g3 could be an idea, but also rook f2, just trading the rooks. Magnus making the best use of his time. He goes rook f2. Queen comes up to c7. He wants his opponent to take so that gf5, the knight can be kicked away. And how is Magnus going to continue here? Where are his pieces going? Well, knight g3. Do you want to play on knight to g3 here? Maybe it's not a bad move at all. He goes rook f1, doubling. I think black will also double here with rook f8. And Hans Niemann, he plays queen e7. We have bishop coming up to g2. A calm, cool move. These are the moves that win you games. These are the moves that you need to make, which kind of make your opponent like, I don't have anything much here. Now queen takes f2. Maybe a good move. Yes, takes it. Queen can go to g3 next. Bishop comes back to f5. And Magnus now puts queen to g3. Well, black can take. Can take here and play rook f8, but that's just piece down. I mean, you have couple of pawns there, but that shouldn't be enough. Keeping this knight is just bad, so maybe taking is better. But he goes rook f8. And now just queen g5. Offering a trade of the queens. And maybe you want to get in knight g5 and try to sack something and go to e6. No, he goes knight c3. Very calm, safe move. Blockading the c passer. Maybe preparing pawn to e4 later to push the bishop away. And e4 played. He opens up the diagonal, pawn to h4 by white. Wants to push h5 later. And Hans Niemann doesn't have too many moves now. He's down to 30 seconds on the clock. Magnus has around 26 seconds. It is getting a bit stressful time-wise. And Hans plays h5. He was planning to maybe move his queen somewhere, but then chose the move h5 here. And Magnus calmly plays another move, which is very tough. King h2, rook goes to f6. And now it's time to attack this pawn even one more time with rook to f4. Then you have 3 attackers. Yes. Oh, he just takes it. Wow. That was very intense. And now if king takes this, check, and you trade the queens and then take on e4. If queen takes directly, you take knight e4. And this is game over. Hans Niemann resigns. Magnus Carlsen scores a beautiful win against Hans. You could see from the start to the finish, Magnus gave his opponent absolutely no chance in this game. And Hans Niemann, well, he will have to wait to beat Magnus in freestyle chess. It's not easy when you face Magnus Carlsen and he is super motivated, and when he plays Hans Niemann, he is inspired. But a game where we have a lot to learn about piece activity and how to keep all your pieces in the game.